Today, I'm sitting down with the COO and co-founder of SNS, Andy Sturm. My name is Steve Seeger, and I am the Director of Acquisitions and Investor Relations here at SNS. Very excited for this video today. You hear us a lot say that we are a partner with calloused hands. And the point of this video is to go over how those calluses were actually built. So Andy's going to come on and he's going to talk about a few stories very, very early on in the days of SNS being founded and how the lessons that he learned then translate to how we operate today, a couple decades later, at a very high level. So let's bring Andy on. Andy, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this. I've already introduced you to the audience here. I want to jump right on into the first project that me and you discussed when prepping for this. Was not your first real estate project or property, but it was a pretty impactful one for your development and growth here. Was starting SNS, 1436 Adams Road. What does that address mean to you?
That was a very large renovation project, the largest one we ever did. Should have been a tear down, but we didn't have the knowledge for new construction, so we could only work within the confines of remodeling. And so, yeah, it was a really, really challenging project through the complexity of the entire house. Yes, it was really good, really tough at the time. Really fond memories of it when I think back onto it, of what we did there.
Yeah. And one of the things that you mentioned with this project, I think prior to recording here, was that it taught you a lot about the different eras of construction. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that and what that looks like and how it translates to today?
So, like you can kind of have a plaster lath and boards of the early 1900s where they had little boards all behind it, and then they just smeared it with dry plaster to make it smooth, and that's held together with like horsehair, and it's really old. And then it evolves over the years to have gypsum lath like plaster wall covering, and then go to drywall. And so pipes, you have cast iron, you have galvanized, you have copper, the evolution of all those things, and it's a PVC and PEX. And so like when you're dealing with a house that's super old or a property that's super old, not only are you dealing with some of that probably original construction style and material, you deal with all the renovations or improvements that someone's made throughout the decades. And so this 1436 house, we don't even really know technically when it was actually built, but it was like probably the second half of the 1800s. Wow. And so there's some really, really old stuff in there. I mean, to give you an example, like we use pine now when we're framing with wood, and they used oak, and you would never use oak. And the oak in the house was old growth oak, so it's like very naturally grown. It wasn't like grown to be harvested, and so like it's very dense. I mean, the screws will just break off in it. How dense it was.
That's why you don't use oak, because it's too dense.
Well, it's too expensive now. Okay. It's too hard. Yeah, pine grows so much faster, so they can they can grow a farm of pine trees and turn them into lumber much faster than they could with oak. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, even oak today is nowhere near as dense as the oak that we had in there, and they had some 20-foot long joists that we took out that are just oak, and they're true like 2x10 joists, and we actually sold them to a woodworker. Like we pulled them all out. We knew they would be nice and could be a really nice piece of furniture one day, so we saved them to the side and sold them to a woodworker.
How'd you find this project too?
This was a tax foreclosure. So the person who lived there owned a house free and clear, quit paying the property taxes for probably 7 or 8 years. Finally, the county foreclosed on him for that, and we went down to the auction and bid on it, and somebody bid us up a couple times, but we bought that for about, I think it was about $8,400, just over $8,000, something like that, sight unseen.
You said this was probably the hardest project you did in those early years too.
Right.
Wow.
Right. I mean, the first week we demoed out over 50,000 pounds. Like you take the garbage to get rid of it, and they weigh you, so we knew it was over 50,000. But the house was so it had so much water issues and water intrusion issues. The foundation had settled a bunch of different ways in different corners. So one of the things that we had to do in that house is we jacked the entire house up off of the foundation walls, took out the top of the foundation walls, redid them to make it level, put in new beams and new supports, and then set the house back down on top of it. And so like that was pretty significant.
This was just you guys too,
right? Yeah, like we had a bunch of different jacks down in the basement that were lifting. and laser levels. So I'm running around on the first floor with a tape measure, measuring down, go up an eighth of an inch over here, a 16th of an inch over here, and Jared's down in the basement, cranking up the house jacks, moving up certain parts of it. So, but it was, the whole thing's creaking, and it was pretty wild. But yeah, we set it back down. It was nice and level.
So it's a little different today.
Yeah. Can't do that anymore. It is a fun experience, and it's a fun memory, but certainly not scalable by any means. To find yourself kind of trapped in that's a full-time job, full-time focus. It's hard to do other things with something like that going on. So yeah, had to scale out of that.
Yeah. So you guys did some flips early on. Talk to me about why that was your strategy in the early days, as you were working with your own capital and focusing on getting the company built off the ground.
So we were, I guess originally when we were doing construction for other people, like remodeling for other people, that was a source of revenue. And then we were able to kind of stop working for other people. We were getting enough rental income to kind of live off of at the time. And then we wanted to generate some cash, and rather than kind of take the path and go back and work for other people and do remodeling, we were going to start going after flips, and we felt like that could really kind of test our skills and apply our knowledge, and we had more control over it. It was a tough thing for us to do in the beginning, was determine the value of our work, and doing flips kind of really exposed that value in a way that just doing a bathroom remodel never could.
And talk to me, can you just walk me through the very first flip that you did?
Yeah, so the very first flip we did, we bought it off of somebody. It was an off-market deal. We knew him from a bowling league, and he was getting married. His fiance didn't want the house. He was renting it out to like friends and family or something, and they had issues, and so he wanted to get rid of it. So we were able to buy it from him for $125,000. And
what was it worth, you think? Was it a good deal, or?
That was probably. I mean, there was equity for sure when we bought it. I would say it was probably worth 160, 170 at the time. You could have just wholesaled it, but then we were able to go in and apply our construction knowledge. We put about 30, 35 into it, and so we're all in about 155, 160, and so
What'd you sell it for? Do you remember?
we sold that for 260.
260.
Yeah, so we made about 100 on that one, on the very first one, which I think is probably pretty unusual for most people. But yeah, that was exciting. It really kind of exposed like, hey, this is the value of the skills that we've built up and how efficient we can be. I mean, it only took us about 3 weeks to do that flip.
It was just you two doing it at the time?
Right. We had one other guy that worked with us. So he was there as well. But yeah, it was just us, and we worked on it, every day, and that was our job. And so we built the rentals. We had already had we had a portfolio of single family rentals probably at that point. I don't know, a little over 10, 15 houses. And that was they were built to last. They were built to run without a bunch of assistance. And so we were able to kind of go do those flips without having to go back and maintain or do work on those rentals, because we really spent the time in the beginning building them to be solid, to last the life of the ownership.
Yeah. You talked to me prior to this about a flip that you guys did, I think in like 2 weeks is what you told me. That was another one I wanted you to share. Today. I think that's a pretty neat story.
So we had met another investor, a really successful investor in the area, who did wholesaling, and he did flips. And so we wanted to establish a good relationship with him, so we could continue to buy houses and things off of him. And so we felt it would be advantageous for us to be impressive and turn that flip quicker than most could. It had an addition on the front of the house that was really bad shape. We had to remove that addition, redo the front siding and things, and redo the whole interior of the house as well. Kitchens and bathrooms, normal stuff that you would do in a flip. But roof, new driveway, new garage doors, stuff like that. A bunch of different things, and we did that in 14 days. Had it from when we bought it to when we put it up on the market. And
were you like sleeping there when you were doing
it? No, I mean, we were probably pulling like 10+ hour days at the time, but it was we using a lot of vendors on that one. Vendors did the roof, vendors did the driveway. We did the addition, and we did all the stuff inside. But to do something that quick, we needed more hands on deck to where, we utilized the vendors for some of those bigger time-consuming tasks like a roof or a driveway.
And then at some point you transitioned into your first smaller commercial property. At what point
Right.
did that happen, and what was that project like?
That was Forest Meadows Apartments. That was a 42-unit building. The whole goal behind flipping and building up our cash position was to buy a community. We saw the value in scaling an apartment community versus houses. Houses, were exposing themselves as being more spread out and sporadic and harder to deal with, the leasing. And if something does come up, it makes it just a little bit more challenging.
Driving all over the city, trying
Yeah. We had a goal to grow, and we were thinking, well, it's much easier to get 42-unit apartment building than it is to go get 42 houses.
Yeah.
But basically, we're going to get a really similar return. So increase the cash position through flips, go buy this apartment community. And yeah, that one was our first one. I don't remember what your question was regarding around that. Like, when did we transition, or?
Yeah, just what was the first commercial property that you
Yeah,
bought?
it's that one, 42 units. We bought it for just over $2 million, I think, at the time. Yeah.
And you guys were doing everything there too?
Yeah, I mean, that one was relatively stable. We didn't have to do a ton there. I mean, as they turn, they turn. So we would have had turn guys do those turns now at that point.
Yeah.
But that was we didn't have to do a ton of renovation to that property. It was relatively stable. The big value add play there was to put the water back onto the residents with sub-metering.
Yeah.
So that was where we were able to identify that through obviously our understanding of plumbing and construction. So it was pretty easy to identify that a meter could be put in for relatively cheap and easy.
Yeah.
And so we were able to really kind of improve NOI through washing out that expense.
How was your business model or your business plan long-term evolving as you guys were starting doing everything, flipping houses, doing these 10, 12, 13, 14-hour days? What were you talking about during those early projects, and how has it evolved?
Yeah, I mean, we would. I feel like we talked a lot about like the growth and the plan and like where we were going to go. And I mean, I think the goals have always been moving. I think when we were originally planning, starting a company and going into rental real estate, like it was, 10 houses would be amazing, but we were in high school, so that was our perspective. But obviously we got to 10 houses pretty quick, and that seemed pretty easy. And you're like, well, what's next? So the goal continues to move, and I don't think we particularly chase like unit count. But it's a pretty easy metric in communication for people to understand. And so, I think shortly after 10, we were looking for 100, and then on the way to 100, we moved it to 1,000. And so like we just felt like we could continue to utilize our knowledge and expertise and what we had already built up in that foundation of knowledge, and kind of translate that over into operational efficiencies of a company that could run and manage the community. So if we knew if we could create really fundamentally stable, strong, functioning communities, then we could also create a management company to go along with it that would only serve to continue to improve that value of those properties through management and through those lessons that we learned.
I mean, I don't think it's entirely unheard of for people to start where you guys did and continue to scale up. My question for you is, how did the experience that you and Jared and Coleman built up very early on, how does it differentiate you from other real estate investors or maybe syndicators, other operators doing what we do today? And can you just explain that to me? Like, how do you feel that is your competitive advantage compared to others?
Yeah, I think I've always valued time a lot. And so when I would always look for efficiencies and ways to do things faster, easier, and better.
Yeah.
And so scaling up and always appealed to me. And I think I'm hard to satisfy. I'm always looking for the next more, like what can those challenges. I think that's what kind of makes life exciting. I think I would be pretty bored if I were to just be done and be complacent. Like I enjoy the challenge of finding the efficiencies in a 1,000-unit portfolio or 1,500-unit portfolio compared to the 100-unit portfolio. I mean, it's such a different thing. Every new property, there seems to be another level of complexity and structure and strategy behind the movements, and I think that keeps it pretty exciting and challenges me. And I like to dig into that, just like we did in the construction, and find the most effective way to work through a renovation project to where we could do it in 14 days. I want to find the most effective way to lead the team to manage this property from an unstable asset to a stable asset. And it's actually really fulfilling to see, just like when we would take that renovation. I mean, you're putting your hands on that, you get a lot of fulfillment from that. But it's really fulfilling to see a property that's so unstable and just like trashed and looks bad and all these things, and in a relatively short period of time, take that to something that you can be proud of and that people actually want to live at, and then it's a part of that community. It's pretty cool to see that actually happen, and I think that I get a lot of fulfillment from that. But we do it and it's done, and then it just rides. And so like the feed that drive it makes me want to just go get more, and I think why do other people stop? I mean, I think it's just their preference and their choice. You get comfortable, you get content, and that's nothing wrong with it. It's just why don't I? It doesn't appeal to me.
And how do you think about, I mean, we talk about those calluses that you built up physically, obviously putting in those long days early on, and then one thing that I know we've talked about is more of those mental calluses that get built up too as you continue to figure out ways to improve.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like you get a callus from the physical work, but like you can get a lesson from like the mental work. And like, so when you mess up an order of operations and you cause yourself not only time but money to physically go back, you don't forget that lesson easily. And so you remember it and you improve it and you never make that mistake again. And so it's a really, really good teacher. It burns you hard when you make those types of mistakes. And so I felt like we made those mistakes when we were young on our own, on all of our own money. And we were able to translate those lessons into the development of this company, into the core values, doing the right thing. We were so set on building houses that were so functionally set up for a resident to just move in and occupy. Like the drains would be oversized, like the power would be sufficient to all the outlets, so we're not tripping breakers and having to go over there in the middle of the night. Setting it up so that the house would just work, really helps us in the long run.
I think you see that in the projects we do today, focusing ahead of time on investing heavily into these communities, because it does give you a lot of time back in the long run, and it helps the investment perform well too.
Right.
One of the things that you mentioned there was continuing to do the right thing. It's one of the core values. What are some examples of that aside from, I think you said the drains? I mean,
wiring, things like hidden junction is an example of something that is like so easy to do. A hidden junction would be where you're moving electrical, and pretty much every renovation you're going to be moving electrical. Well, you could just splice those wires together and tuck them back in the wall and be done with it, and probably there would be no issue with that. But that's not what you should do, because if there were ever an issue with it and that connection came unloose, you would never be able to problem solve it, because you would never know where it is. So then you'd end up having such a huge problem where you had to run new circuit, run new wiring. And so always to avoid those looming future problems, we would do the work up front. And like, I think that's do the right thing, the core value of doing the right thing. And so we try to do that still today in the renovations that we do. We go in and we do large renovations right off the bat. We get the property right to where we want it, and so that way we know how it will run, and we can predict how it will run, and then we just execute on that because we have built the foundation of that property to do what we want it to do.
And again, those mental and physical calluses over the years translate into those core values that get translated into our communities today. What other core values? We got them up on the wall here, that's why I'm pointing. What other ones up there you think, as you reflect back on the first couple of projects?
Continuously improving for sure is one. That's where those lessons come in. It's kind of like you learn a hard lesson, you want to figure out what you could have done better. always keeping that in the forefront of your mind is how can I have done this one better? How can we do the next property better?
Yeah.
How can we underwrite better? How could we manage the resident relations better? All those things. And then driven too, for sure, would be one where it was just kind of like a very strong, I don't know, connection between Jared and I, where we're just like, we relied on each other. If I didn't show up, I'm letting him down. If he didn't show up, he's letting me down.
Yeah.
And we try to pass that along to the entire organization as a value, and the fact that we want people to drive to be successful, drive to be the best, be very driven in what they do and take passion in it. It's important. I think what we do is important, not only on the aspect that it's just improving a physical property and all that, but I do believe truly that it impacts the people's lives who live there.
Mm-hmm. And now you're 2 decades in almost, and
Yep.
the growth has been pretty incredible to watch. But that's really helpful too, because it helps not only the investors, but also the team members here. You really do understand where those calluses come from. Mm-hmm. And it's nice to hear those concrete examples from the past. Is there anything that you would want to leave the viewer, maybe an investor, maybe a team member here at SNS with on this video here today?
I think doing the right thing would be one of the main core values that I would go back to, and I think that that's something that you can always choose to do, even if you haven't chosen like that in the past.
Yeah.
If you've made some decisions that weren't the right thing, and you can always, it's just one decision away from doing that from then on out. So I think that leaves the team with, like, I think that's a huge core value, and I think it brings a lot of the other core values together. And so, like, I think for that, that's probably one of our key drivers behind the growth and the success we built at SNS.
Mm-hmm. Thank you
Yep.
for your time.
Thanks.